like big hair. Wait, is that better? Hi everybody, this week marks the launch of Revolver Road, the third book in my Echo Killing series, which I love and which you will love if you read it. You must read it, it's very important to me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, what inspired it, and yeah, I'm gonna gab on about Revolver Road, so let's go. So Revolver Road is the third book in the series that began with The Echo Killing and continued with A Beautiful Corpse, still one of my favorite titles of any book I've ever written. And now we're at third in the series, Revolver Road. All of the books follow my main character, a crime reporter named Harper McClain, who is investigating for her job crimes that are committed in Savannah, Georgia, where she lives and works for a newspaper, but also a murder from her past that continues to haunt her. And this combination of crimes really comes together in Revolver Road. So rather than give away any spoilers about the background, and like for those of you who haven't read the series, it involves the murder of her mother when she was a child 15 years ago. I'm going to talk a little about the murder at the heart of Revolver Road because it was inspired by a real incident that happened when I was a reporter in America. So hang on, I'm gonna set these down. So, right. There was a musician in the 90s, hugely famous, very beautiful, named Jeff Buckley. Gorgeous voice. Did this cover of Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah that's still just like, if anybody who was around in the 90s runs screaming from the room because it's too traumatic to even hear it. It's too beautiful. It's making the dog cry. One night, Jeff Buckley went out with a friend and they'd been maybe drinking, maybe not drinking. The story's very hazy. But Jeff Buckley walked into the river and disappeared. That's how his friend described it. One minute he was there and he walked into the river holding his guitar, singing a Led Zeppelin song. And then he turned around, and when he turned back, he was gone. He just disappeared. He wasn't in the water. They searched the river, they went up and down the side channels, they searched the coast. Everybody was looking for him. He was famous. And I lived about 250 miles downriver in New Orleans, and where I worked as a reporter. And I, like everybody I knew, was fascinated by this story. People just don't walk into a river and then vanish. Like that doesn't happen like that. And in fact, the story seemed too clean, too almost a cliche that he walked into the river singing with his guitar and then was gone. And so a rumor mill sprang up very quickly. The police were quite cagey in terms of whether they thought a crime had been committed. They wouldn't be drawn on that. Like, they just wouldn't say. All they would say is, we don't know where he is, and we're looking for him. So soon, there were rumors that he was spotted in New Orleans, where I lived, in Los Angeles, in Boston, in New York. People spotted him everywhere. And everybody was convinced that this was either a homicide or the whole thing was a con, because he was so fragile and had always been very hesitant to be famous. It was obviously something he didn't want. He was very ambivalent about being a celebrity. He wanted to sing, but maybe he didn't want to be known. And apparently in the weeks before he disappeared, he'd done things like apply for jobs at the local zoo in Memphis, where he went in to like help the animals, or at a coffee shop in Nashville. Like he was doing these things as if he were an ordinary person, as if he could just walk away from his fame. And so people began to think that maybe that was what he had done. He had just walked away and he was fine. And when no body was found and days went by, gradually it just seemed as if maybe he was fine somewhere, everything was okay, this was just a ruse and that was okay, and it was kind of clever. And then one day, fishermen found a body about 3 or 4 miles from where he had disappeared. And it was him. And then everybody became convinced it was a homicide. But then police said it wasn't. He just drowned. It really had been exactly the way his friend had said. He had walked into the river, and the current was very strong, extremely strong on the Mississippi, and he'd misjudged, and that was that. I've always remembered that week when nobody knew what was happening, and rumors were everywhere, and the kind of pressing suspense of it. Where is he? Will we ever know? How does somebody so famous just disappear? And that played into Revolver Road. I don't know why I started thinking about it, but in some way, I think I've always wanted to write a story about that, about somebody disappearing and not knowing if it was a murder. And if it was, it would probably be somebody close to them, or it could be a crazed fan. And how do you figure that out if nobody saw what happened? And so that's how I came up with the story in Revolver Road. The story that's at the heart of it is about a young musician in Savannah who, on a night a storm is coming in off the coast, goes down to the beach on an island just outside of town, where I used to live, actually, in Tybee Island, and then doesn't come back. And because he's famous, the national media gets interested, and this becomes a story that Harper McClain, our main character, because this is her town, this is her hometown, she wants to be the one to really break it, to figure out what happened. But in her own fragile state, because of all the other things that are going on in her life, she soon gets way too close to the people who were closest to him, all of whom she sometimes forgets are now suspects, even though they're young, talented, apparently like kind, interesting people. Most crimes are crimes of passion. And so in this book, she forgets sometimes because she really, in a way, falls in love with his friends. And they represent, for her in this very stressful time, a life she could have had if her own life had been different, if her mother hadn't been killed, if she hadn't become obsessed with murder, and then sort of adopted by the police. And she's very much an orphan in her own mind. She feels quite alone in the world, which is, I've written deliberately in contrast, so that we as outsiders, we see her good friends and the people who look out for her and love her. But without a family, because she has no brothers or sisters, and her mother's dead and her father has abandoned her, without that family, she always feels even more alone than she is. So when she meets the people who, this character Xavier Rain, the musician, the people he lived with, they're all his age, so they're all in their early to mid-20s. They're all looking out for each other, and they are this unit. And at times when she's with them, they all almost forget why they're there. They are talking and they're finding that they connect. And in that connection, she realizes that even though she feels so much older than them, she's exactly their age. And her skill is writing. So she has her own art as well to bring to this. So they are all in their own way artists. And they obviously, like she likes them, and they like her, despite the thing that's brought them together. And so in this moment, Harper, who is desperate for a family, desperate to be part of a group where everybody loves each other and looks out for each other, forgets that she's working, and that odds are one of them probably, if he was killed, one of them did it. And if he wasn't, one of them knows more than they're saying, either way. So forgetting that is dangerous for her, and it's not something she would want to do. But her levels of stress are very high in this book. Things are very dangerous in this book. There is so much going on in this book that she can be, for the first time in her life, because she is so tough, she can be forgiven for, on some level, maybe just wanting to escape herself. Did he get away? Did he just walk away from his life? And what would that be like? And could she do that? And maybe that would be amazing. These are all the things going on in her head while she's investigating not one murder, but two. And in a heck of a lot of danger. So yeah, this book has it all happening. Well, as most of you know, my first real job as a grown-up was as a crime reporter. And then later as just a reporter. I covered lots of different things. And when I was a crime reporter, I was very young. I was younger than Harper. I was 22. And the way it works in reporting, particularly crime reporting, is you need a lot of people on the police force and in the ambulance service, and like anybody, paramedics, cops, detectives, coroners. You need contacts everywhere who will trust you enough to talk to you off the record and tell you the truth about what's going on, because the things that the police will say is so minimal. Like, they will almost tell you nothing on the record. You have to have people on the inside who will tell you things. And the way you get people on the inside who will tell you things is you befriend them. I used to go to the same restaurant the cops went to for lunch. and just sort of, I knew where they went. And by lunch, I mean, like, I worked the night shift and so did they, so lunch was like at 7 o'clock at night. So I would go, and they called it lunch, we all called it lunch. This is the night shift, my friends, it's this weird world. And so I would go where they went and just hang out and just like, oh my God, are you here too? Wow. And they saw right through me, because let me tell you something about detectives. They notice everything. So, but at the same time, they liked talking about their work. Everybody's a bit of a gossip, really. And so if I could convince them that they could trust me and gossip with me, then I would get insider info. And eventually, when I didn't tell anything in the newspaper that they didn't want told, then when the time came that they wanted something told, it's me they would come to. That was the exchange. So I listened to a lot of stories and did not write them until they said, you can write this. And then I wrote it. And then eventually we got to where we had an exchange. But in the midst of that, obviously, I became actual friends with many of them. I was so close to several paramedics as well, and paramedics know everything. I confused them with my real friends. Like, I've never, like, it's, maybe they were real friends, but when somebody's telling you something and you're going to put it in the paper for 50, 100,000 people to read, friendship is shaky because their jobs are on the line with everything I write, and my job is on the line with everything they tell me. And when your whole career is on the line because of something your friend says, friendships can shatter in an instant. And also, you can forget then that this is a source and that this person may be trying to get something out of you as well. It's tricky. It's a tricky business. It's a tricky balance, and her blurring of those lines in this book is extremely familiar to me. The lines were always blurred for me when I was a reporter. I'm incapable, if I really like somebody, of not liking them and trusting them. And therefore, I was sometimes not the best reporter because I love you. You would never lie to me. And people would lie to you. So there you go. Thank you for being here to listen to me talk about Revolver Road today, one of my favorite books that I've written, actually one of the hardest books I've ever written, and one that I feel this series in my heart because Harper is so much a part of my own past, I think. I hope you'll all have an amazing day. Thank you for being here. I'll be back in a week with another video. You're all awesome.